ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for braving the rains. It's been really unseasonably wet this morning, and you made it more or less on time. Now, in fact, it's so bad that I received a notice from Financial Times too, which said that we're not going to deliver the papers this week because of bad weather. I didn't know whether it was directed to Singapore or to the United States or Europe. But anyway, thank you for coming. This morning, we will discuss the regional outlook for 2024. That is Southeast Asia and looking really at the larger Asia-Pacific, Indo-Pacific. Singapore is full of conferences, but most of the conferences really focus on larger questions, thematic questions, technology, cybersecurity, the world economy, climate change, and the United States and China. Far fewer conferences focus on Southeast Asia, and today we fill in that gap as the Chief Executive, Chee has said this morning. This year, 2024, is a very significant year. Right now, you have two wars, the Ukraine war going on and Israel-Hamas war. There will be some 40 by some count, 50 by another count, elections going on throughout the world this year. In our region, we have the Indonesian election, we have Taiwan, and we will have India. And the most significant election of all, we have the elections, the presidential elections for the United States. So this year could really be a game changer. I moderated Mr. Richard Haas 2 days ago when he spoke at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He was, as you know, for 20 years, the president of the Council on Foreign Relations. And I said, Richard, in 2022, we had the Ukraine war. In 2023, we had the Israel-Hamas war. What is the surprise for 2024? I won't tell you his answer. Now, as you saw, you can see this is a really significant year. It is my great pleasure this morning to introduce our keynote speaker, Tan Sri Anifah Aman, and who is currently Senator of the Dewan Negara, Malaysia. Most of you know him as the Distinguished Foreign Minister of Malaysia, a position he held for almost a decade, from 2009 to 2018. Tan Sri Anifah hails from Sabah, where he was a member of parliament for Kimanis and Beaufort. Prior to becoming foreign minister, he was deputy minister for the Ministry of Primary Industries and also the Ministry for Plantation Industries and Commodities. Today, he continues his foreign policy interests as advisor on for international relations and foreign investment to the Chief Minister of Sabah and chairs Invest Sabah and the Labuan Corporation. Tan Sri Anifah is going to speak today on rivalry and distrust in the global order. How should Southeast Asia respond? He will speak for about 20-25 minutes. He sort of said to me, I may take less time than that, so there's more time for you, and then I'll ask him some questions, a couple of questions, and throw the floor open to all of you. So please ask him as many questions as you want. Tan Sri Anifah, your floor.
Thank you, Professor Chan. You've been very kind for your kind words. And we had a very good dinner and rest, but I'm not sure what I'm going to tell you, it's all from my past experiences. And I don't represent the Malaysian government, or the words that I use is entirely my own. And a very good morning to all, Mr. Chairman, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'm deeply honored to deliver the keynote address and this regional outlook forum organized by ISEAS, Yusof Ishak Institute. It is also truly an honor to share my thoughts and to share the stage with such distinguished speakers who will also share their insights throughout this forum. Now, the intricate tapestry of global politics and economics remain in flux as we usher in the year 2024. And amidst escalating tensions and diminished trust among key global stakeholders, Southeast Asia finds itself at a pivotal juncture requiring nuanced diplomatic engagements. And while Southeast Asia steadfastly maintains the impartial stance, navigating these intricate dynamics has become increasingly challenging. Given the paramount importance of territorial integrity, especially concerning the South China Sea, the defense of sovereign rights becomes a cornerstone of regional strategy. This discourse endeavors to elucidate those concerns, offering a coherent roadmap for Southeast Asia in these transformative times. And the fall of Berlin Wall, I just want to go direct to the epochal shift of the post-Berlin era. Now, the fall of Berlin Wall and subsequent dissolutions of the Iron Curtain mark a paradigm shift, and this epochal transformation paved the way for proliferations of democratic values, with former command economies transitioning towards capitalism. Now, amidst the geopolitical recalibration, China has emerged as the principal beneficiary, capitalizing on the vacuum left by USSR fragmentation. Now, post the global financial crisis, China's meteoric rise solidified its position as a global economic powerhouse, epitomizing the transformative power of open markets and strategic investments. Ladies and gentlemen, China's competitive market offerings have profoundly influenced global trade dynamics. The Belt and Road Initiative, underpinned by the comprehensive financial frameworks, has redefined infrastructure development, enhancing China's geopolitical footprint. Yet, this economic ascendancy has not been devoid of challenges. Now, resistance to Chinese market penetration, coupled with global realignments, underscore the multifaceted nature of the Chinese global engagements. China's producers, especially in the United States, have encountered stiff local resistance, and the resistance include non-tariff barriers, as local producers were forced to relocate to countries such as Malaysia, Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, and Mexico, and even back to China, now to remain competitive, resulting in increasing unemployment and joblessness. China's rapid economic rise, and the negative responses had arguably led to increased China's political assertiveness, military presence, and upgrading to safeguard its own interests. Now, this assertive posture, both economically and militarily, underscore the commitment to safeguarding national interests, as evident by its active promotion of BRICS and also the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Ladies and gentlemen, the US-led NATO and the European Union has been quick to capitalize on the collapse of the Soviet system in the Eastern Europe by actively engaging for new members right up to the doorstep of what remains of the Kremlin. The Russians, who are having opened up to the West, were clearly alarmed at the eastward expansions of NATO. The eastward expansion has undoubtedly served as the primary raison d'etre for the current Ukraine-Russia war, which has been going, I think, for 98 weeks. Now, simultaneously, US-China dynamics intensified with strategic initiatives like AUKUS and the Indo-Pacific alliances signaling a recalibration of US foreign policy priorities. However, these initiatives measured responses in the Indo-Pacific region given ASEAN burgeoning economic ties with China and its commitment to non-alignment principles. Ladies and gentlemen, amid shifting geopolitical alignments, ASEAN faces the imperative of recalibrating its strategy engagements. The burgeoning Sino-Russian partnership, juxtaposed against US pivot strategies, requires a nuanced approach. The forum emphasized on trust as a cornerstone of stable international relations resonates deeply, underscoring the importance of a collective ASEAN response to these many challenges. And the contemporary world, characterized by volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, presents a multifaceted challenges. Technological transformations, coupled with social media's pervasive influence, have magnified governance challenges, engendering global disinformation campaigns and governance dysfunctions. In this interconnected landscape, regional conflicts resonate globally and exemplified by the Gaza's conflict impact on Southeast Asia's geopolitical calculus. Ladies and gentlemen, let us not forget the ongoing slaughter of the Palestinians in Gaza. The fact that more than 20,000 Palestinians have been killed and two-thirds are women and children have called into question the appropriateness of Israel's response to the Hamas attack beginning on October 7, 2023. Now, on 29 December 2023, South Africa has filed a case against Israel in the International Court of Justice, ISEAS, accusing it of crimes of genocide against Palestinian people of Gaza. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel has also called the situation in Gaza as genocide. Pope Francis, in his address to Palestinians, said this was genocide, and in a public audience elsewhere, said that it is not war, but it is terrorism. Now, this comes following the veto by the United States on the ceasefire motion in the UN Security Council. The ceasefire motion tabled at the UN General Assembly, however, received an overwhelming support. The US, being Israel's main ally, is seen as the backer of Israeli aggression without any regard to UN Charter on Human Rights. The differing responses at the UN reflects a global shift in sentiment, underscoring the complex interplay of geopolitical interests and humanitarian imperatives. The US is now seen as having a serious credibility issue with trust deficit, as it no longer enjoys the moral high ground, talking about human rights, no democracy. In layman terms, US does not walk the talk. To complicate matter even further, the US now leading a multinational maritime force to protect the Red Sea passage against the Houthi, who launched attacks on targeted ships in support of the Palestinians in the Gaza war. Now, there was, however, noticeable silence from Russia and China, despite the fact that the Defense Security Asia reported that 30% of global containers and 10% of world oil tanker passes through this Red Sea. Now, the optics of Gaza war will become more complicated now, politically, economically, and also security-wise. Ladies and gentlemen, forging ahead, we come back closer to home, and it all boils down to whether we can rely on the United States to defend and safeguard the rights of individuals as well as Southeast Asian states against China's perpetrated aggressions and assertiveness. Or is China's perpetrated aggression real, or just part of the U.S. playbook in the context of U.S.-China rivalry? Can we have any assurance that U.S. will not take retaliatory actions against a number of Southeast Asian countries who have called for a ceasefire in Gaza and having their citizens boycotting products of companies who contributed profits towards the killing of Palestinian women and children? On the other hand, has China demonstrated that it's actually disregarded or even interfered with the rights of the Southeast Asian states? In reality, China has been very cautious in dealing with its neighbors from my past experiences, and China seems to be much more amenable to resolving contested issues such as the South China Sea issues via dialogue rather than active interference or threats. China's stance in involving contested issues via dialogue with ASEAN, especially involving the East Asia, Southeast Asian region, was in large partly due to the unity and cohesiveness of ASEAN states. I recall when I was the Foreign Minister of Malaysia, my Chinese counterpart would always try to have a discussion or a dialogue with each ASEAN member state separately, trying to make issue as a bilateral issue rather than a collective regional issue. As you're all well aware, there are only 4 ASEAN member states that are claimants of the contested South China Sea area. However, ASEAN remains steadfast by insisting that such as the South China Sea be discussed and negotiated collectively between ASEAN on one side and China on the other. Now, China, realizing this, respected our collective position. Now, given these multifaceted challenges, Southeast Asia's strategic recalibration remains a pressing concern. ASEAN commitment to regional peace, human rights, and neutrality must be unwavering. Thus, I believe that ASEAN strategic imperatives involve advocating for a united regional voice on shared principles and interests, championing UN reforms to ensure equitable global governance, enhancing ASEAN institutional capacity to navigate regional complexities actively. Ladies and gentlemen, as a case in point, let me illustrate my key point using the case of Sabah, my state, where I hail from Kota Kinabalu, and Labuan, which I'm representing as a senator. Now, for the first half of 2023, just a little bit of background, Malaysia successfully secured approved investment of ringgit Malaysia 132.6 billion from international investors, including US and China. In terms of trade and investments, Malaysia has always been open to foreign trade and investments regardless of the geopolitical positions of the source countries. Sabah and Labuan, together as a very strategic geographic locations, surrounded by a vast ocean of 37,300 square kilometers and a continental shelf covering an area of 116,800 square kilometers, as well as coastline of 2,383 kilometers. Now, to benefit from this advantage, the Sabah state government has made the blue economy as its new focus. The blue economy refers to the sustainable benefit of marine resources for economic growth, improve the standard of living, and job creations while looking after the marine ecosystem sustainably. Among the fields identified for Sabah are fisheries and aquaculture, shipping and transportation, tourism, renewable energy, mineral resources, biotechnology and pharmaceutical, blue carbon, waste management and pollution control, research and growth, and marine infrastructure. The activities within blue economic sector, however, are still fraught with serious risks and also challenges. Now, the most serious challenges include maritime boundaries and overlapping territorial claims, operations of international laws of the seas, UNCLOS, United Nations Convention laws of the sea, and ipso facto freedom of navigation. Now, the recent geopolitical tensions have invited active engagement of great powers at our own doorsteps. Therefore, there must be a clarity from ASEAN on security matters, cross-border protocol, and freedom of navigation par excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, how should Southeast Asia respond? Now, as I have said earlier, Southeast Asia, or ASEAN, particularly have always been non-aligned. However, in light of global events, the US-China conundrum, the Ukraine-Russia conflict, and especially the atrocities in Gaza, I pose a question to us all. How long shall we sit and watch, and how many more have to be slaughtered before the atrocities end? Now, to demonstrate ASEAN neutrality, but maintaining itself as a responsible regional body, ASEAN should not remain oblivious and any breaches of UN protocols, especially on the human rights to life and freedom and also security. Now, ASEAN neutrality should not be seen as condoning outright disrespect for human life. Therefore, ASEAN should make a stance, especially regarding the atrocities in Gaza. It should also take actions what South Africa did by bringing Israel to International Court of Justice, ICJ, for its genocide actions. And when making a stand, ASEAN will then begin to play an active role in the resolutions of global conflicts, and it should do this independently of US-China rivalry. Now, ASEAN can do so by engaging with other international bodies directly, such as the European Union, the OIC, or the African Union, and act as pressure groups to the United Nations. Lastly, during my tenure as a Foreign Minister of Malaysia, we have called for reform of the United Nations. As I have said earlier, the US vetoed against a ceasefire in UN Security Council. This differed from the consensus reached in the UN General Assembly. Is one veto all it takes to make the UN helpless in resolving global conflict? That's the question that's before us. Now, as such, ASEAN member states and of the UN should make calls to reform of the UN so that the supremacy of the UN General Assembly is to be maintained. Ladies and gentlemen, ASEAN accomplishment in elevating regional prosperity and fostering global dialogue are commendable. However, complacency and pure neutrality to the point of ignorance is a luxury ASEAN cannot afford at all. Now, the imperative of ASEAN's unity, advocacy, and strategic foresight has never been more pronounced than ever. In the intricate geopolitical landscape, ASEAN's future hinges on collective resilience, strategic visions, and unwavering commitment to upholding principle of human rights. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tan Sri. That was a very powerful and comprehensive statement that you have made, and you've opened up many areas for discussion. So let me begin with a couple of questions and then let the others, have a chance to pose their questions to you. You may answer the questions from where you are sitting, will be seated during this process. Now, you have raised a couple of very interesting questions. Your statement, your speech was really quite comprehensive. You began with the rise of China's assertiveness, in terms of its economic approach and its strategic approach. And then you traversed the world and you brought us to the latest issue, the latest war, which I understand Malaysia feels very strongly about, and some other countries in the region. Let me ask you then first it's really a soft question, and it is, how do you think ASEAN is doing then? Because you asked ASEAN to sort of sit up and really we've got to take a position. How are we doing in terms of balancing between the United States and China? generally, not just on the Israel-Hamas war, but as a whole, how do you think we are doing in terms of that balance? And how do you think, and do you think the United States and China will let us be and to remain in this position of not choosing?
Thank you. Professor is more informative on foreign affairs than I do, but never mind, I'll try to answer the questions. Now, I think balancing between US and China rivalry is of great importance to ASEAN. How do we handle this? And of course, China is our biggest trading partner, and US in terms of security, and therefore, how not to get involved in their rivalry, but at the same time that ASEAN feels secure. And this is the question that we have always discussed during our meetings. And of course, we're saying, as I said in my speech, that China is willing to sit down and engage with us. Even in a multilateral, they're trying to have a bilateral. And therefore, we feel secure in the sense that they're not making any threat, but instead, sitting down engagements. Well, US, as far as my experience is concerned, you either take what we are telling you, or it is your own parade. That's my answer, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you. Since you've raised the issue of the Israel-Hamas war and you spoke at some length about it, let me ask you this question as foreign minister and someone who's also been looking after domestic issues, the domestic economy. I think the rise of China and the US-China rivalry and issue has really had a profound impact on the region and on our domestic societies. So has the Israel-Hamas war. Can you describe to us how these two issues have, in your view, affected our societies? First, how the US-China rivalry has affected our societies, then how the Israel-Hamas war has affected our societies.
Let me answer first the Israel-Hamas war first. And there are parties that are confused that Malaysia is not fighting based on religion. It is based on human rights. And we have always believed in the two-state solution where both states can live in harmony side by side. But unfortunately, although it's been brought up in United Nations many a times, but it never come up to the table, to actually address the problems. And during my time as a chairman of Security Council, Professor, we passed a resolutions of these illegal settlements of Israel and into the Palestinian lands. And for the first time, America abstained and did not veto. So I was thinking that we are moving inch by inch towards finding a solution to the conflict that has been existed for some time. But, with US, like, for example, the veto, the ceasefire, where do we go from that? And this is why there's a China-US rivalry is also equally important. Now, we're also doing trades with US, but in terms of security, as I said, we constantly also discuss how to maintain peace and security in this region. Now, US plays a very important role. But while we are talking to the US how to maintain peace and security, we don't want China to feel slighted, that as if we are shifting to the US side. So this is the intricacies and the complexities that we have to deal. And therefore, as I said, from time to time, we have engagements and how with ASEAN neutrality and peaceful engagements will yield a result. So it's constantly changing. It is not one policy will solve the whole problem, but it's changing from time to time, and it is up to the ASEAN member states. How do we perceive? What shall we do on that? Thank you.
Let me press you further on that. Sorry, this is my third question, but it's really the second question. I want to press you further on that, Tan Sri. Is the domestic impact of the issues, what is the domestic impact of the Israel-Hamas issue in Malaysian society, for instance? And what is the domestic impact of the US-China rivalry on the Malaysian polity? Every country in ASEAN has to deal with it, but I thought, since you are from Malaysia, you may want to elaborate from your own country.
Yeah, there are several colleagues from Malaysia here. Khairi Jamaluddin is there, but I'm not sure whether he's going to agree with me. But the conflict between Hamas and Israel is not about religion. It's about human rights. This is what we've been telling the world, that it's nothing to do with religion. So, but there are parties who look at it as a religious issue. So Malaysia is, that's why I said, is standing on the firm ground, saying that, look, there must be a solution to this. And therefore, we're saying first to the ceasefire, stop the atrocities. Now, without that, I think another colleague of mine, the Mujahid, will not accept that if the atrocities were to carry on and more people are being killed or slaughtered, whatever words that you want to say, and there is no some sort of light at the end of the tunnel. And this is why the frustration is big countries, powerful countries should take the lead and show a good example of how international issues could be solved. So for the time being, we don't have that light that I was talking about. Now on the impact of ASEAN-China rivalry, well, we gain some, we lose some. And what I mean by gain some, lose some, is there are instances whereby we disagree with what US are doing, and we said our piece. But at the same time, when they're doing something good, we're saying, thank you very much, let's expand on this. And therefore, there are pluses and minuses on the relationship between Malaysia or ASEAN to US-China rivalry. And of course, the economic impact is felt to us, I think, throughout the world. Now, and in Malaysia is no exception. But how the government deal with these complexities, as I said, although we do not have a formula, but it is an ongoing discussions, and we are talking about the benefits, because the Southeast Asia, the route from the west, and I think the South China Sea is one of the second biggest economic routes for this part of the world. So it is for everybody's interest to find solutions to this conundrum.
Thank you. Now, I'm going to let the audience have an opportunity to pose questions. When you do, can you please just mention where you are, your name and where you are from, because it helps the speaker interpret the question. Yes, please. Yes, Casey Mays, DCM of the American Embassy.
Good morning, Mr. Anifah. It's, as Ambassador Chan said, my name is Casey Mace. I'm the Deputy Chief of Mission at the American Embassy. It's always a great benefit to hear your insights in the region, even if it is laced with significant criticism of the United States. And I do want to acknowledge and recognize that there are countries in the region, including yours, that have serious issues and objections and disagreements with the position we took at the United Nations. But I also want to affirm that the United States does not have a disregard for what's happening in the Israel-Palestinian conflict. In fact, we've been among the most active members of the international community to try to bring peace to that that area. And, you know, among the many trips that President Biden and Secretary Blinken and Secretary Austin have taken, the amount of assistance that we've provided to Palestinians over the last 2 months, we've even conducted some military airlifts of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip to the civilians there. So the United States is very active on this issue, and I acknowledge and recognize that some of the approaches we've taken have been objected to by others in the region. But I do want to also say that I'm pleased to hear you call for ASEAN to take a more active role on global issues. In fact, it was during your term and under your active leadership, Minister, that I think ASEAN did exercise a lot more influence on global issues to the benefit of global peace and prosperity. And so I wanted to bring back to you one of the topics you raised as a defining issue for global order today, and that's the Russia-Ukraine conflict. We're about to mark the second year of Russia's invasion. It's claimed over 70,000 Ukrainian lives and more than 100,000 injured in Ukraine. And so my question is, you know, the international community, a lot of the international community wonder why Russia continues to enjoy the privileged status of ASEAN dialogue partner as it tries to redefine international borders with total disregard for sovereignty of another country. What more can ASEAN do as you call for ASEAN to take a more active stance on these issues? What more can and should ASEAN do to bring that conflict to an end?
Thank you very much. It's very lengthy questions, and I try to.
It was a statement and a question.
Yeah, statement and station. Yeah, it's more of a statements than question.
Oh, that was a question. What more?
Okay, I was expecting, actually, I was very pleased that I said the American representative from the embassy would be here. And because this has always been the way that when I was a foreign minister, I engaged with the State Secretary, Hillary Clinton, Rex Tillerson, John Kerry, very frank, because as I said, we want to tell them exactly how we feel and how our neighbors and our other ASEAN member states feel. And of course, the Middle Eastern part. But there are sometimes actions taken by America, which we solely depend and acknowledge and recognize you as the world leader. But things that, when I was chairman of the Security Council, and that's one of the first time I was told that Samantha Powers,
Yes.
abstain on the illegal installments. That was an achievement. I thought, excellent, good. At least U.S. is looking at things differently now. But when you're talking, I don't want to mention other things that you mentioned, but when you're talking about the veto power against a ceasefire, I don't understand. Because if it goes on as it is now, more people will be killed. And U.S. being the acknowledged leader of the world superpowers, and should find a solution that will, give peace and security to that region. And this is what Malaysia has always been hoping on. This two-state solution. I'm sure, Excellency, this is what has always been bandied about. And so we're still looking forward to U.S. reasonableness and the feelings of the Palestinians. And they have the rights to live too in peaceful conditions. Now talking about what's your Ukraine. Well, I had the privilege of chairing the Security Council in 2015, 2016, and we Lithuania and of course Excellency Sergei Lavrov, the Foreign Minister of Russia, was engaged in a very heated discussion until I told them, look, I'm giving the floor to this. If you don't sit down, I'm forced to ask you to leave. But I said, I'll give you the floor after that. So what Russia was saying, look, we are very open, and we are working very closely with the European Union, and of course to a certain extent, America. But it does raise concern, which is, I think, legitimate, that when NATO expanding eastwards, and that's the same argument posed by Israel, because they say that's security. We don't want our enemies in our front door. So, and that steps, as I said, sometimes when we talk in a very friendly manner, we're saying, why do Americans want to expand NATO to these countries when there's peace and security? It's not excellent, but at least there exists, cooperations in terms of business. And this also poses a lot of questions. But being a former foreign minister, that's why I had said engagements. And I followed the then Prime Minister to see Obama, with Trump. And we raised the same questions over and over again. We're saying, we are looking at you. You are one of the possibilities of a solution. So how can you assist? And, well, insofar as I'm concerned, all those talks, all those discussions, we have not seen the real positive side of it. And I'm still hoping that America will, in terms of security, in terms of world, disorder, should find a solution to the problems that we have.
Thank you. I think table 18, Danny Kwa. Microphone, please. Table 18.
Thank you, Tan Sri, for your very powerful and clear statement on the Gaza situation. My name is Danny Kwa. I'm from the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. What I'd like to ask you is a follow-up on Ambassador Chan's question about US-China rivalry. Your answer in terms of ASEAN's appropriately balanced response to this rivalry was very clear. My question is, does your analysis also tell us about what the end game is that's envisioned by either the United States or China in this process of rivalry? And is there an end game that ASEAN will find very awkward and uncomfortable? Thank you.
Well, to answer your question, yes, we feel very awkward, and when we have, ASEAN Plus meeting, and we become the spectator instead of the initiator, because the two parties exchanging words, which sometimes I personally have experienced that kind of situation whereby I signal another foreign minister, let's go out for a smoke. Because we know it's not going anywhere. But what we have always won among the ASEAN member states is that please listen to us. And of course, in terms of trade with China, we said we have 640 million people, or now 660. And ASEAN is also important to China. And in terms of security, when we feel rather uncomfortable when the Seventh Fleet flying through the South China Sea and to the Indian Oceans, and then China feel, something like intrusions of theirs. And at the same time, we're saying this is an overlapping claim where claimant states like Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Philippines are involved. So, to be honest with you, I'm at loss how to approach this, because our voice never really matters to some of these superpowers. The only difference is, as I said, China is engaging bilaterally in a multilateral, meetings, and which we appreciate because they listen to our views. And U.S., well, yes, they are concerned, but not the way that we want them, the ASEAN, to work closely with America. In terms of security, we need America's presence. Yeah.
Right.
Is that answer the question?
Not quite, but never mind. I'm going to move to the next.
Okay.
Yeah? Table 6. Ha.
Thank you. My name is Ha. I'm from ISEAS Yusof Ishak Institute. Sir, I would like to continue from what you just commented on the situation in the South China Sea. I remember in the years between 2014 and 2016, when you were the the foreign minister of Malaysia, you were among the most outspoken Southeast Asian or ASEAN minister on this issue within ASEAN meetings. Last year, Malaysian Prime Minister Ibrahim Anwar, he drew some domestic criticism when he said that Malaysia was open to negotiating with China regarding when he talked about some oil exploration project by Malaysia within what Malaysia considers its own maritime waters. And in September, of course, that remarks were later clarified, explained by the Foreign Ministry of Malaysia. And in September, Prime Minister Anwar said that he found the Chinese explanation after its release of the 10-dash line map quite reassuring. So I would like to seek your views on the current Malaysian government's position or policy on the South China Sea disputes. Do you find, like the Prime Minister, the Chinese policy and action in the South China Sea reassuring? And just now you said that China is listening to Southeast Asian concerns and views. Do you think that China is really listening to the Southeast Asian claimant states' concerns on the Chinese action in the South China Sea? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you're asking me to
Malaysian position
what
on South China Sea
Malaysia's
now.
position to what the Prime Minister has said, and I am in. You see, during my time, I simplified a lot of things. Yes, I was asked to be the spokesman for the ASEAN, especially among the claimant states. But insofar as Malaysia is concerned, we do not recognize the 9-dash line. Now it's a 10-dash line. I'm behind one. Mm-hmm. So we have always emphasized to China the importance of peace and stability, and of course in the region. And we are saying we are willing to work with China. And this is in no reference to the Prime Minister, but when I was a Foreign Minister, maybe you can, after that, you can deduce. And you're saying that you're open to work closely with Malaysia on a PSC, profit sharing contract, like Exxon, like Shell, but not a joint development. And they said, well, if you have succeeded in Vietnam and Thailand, where you have a joint development and it benefits everybody, then why not in Malaysia? But see, there's one big difference there. Joint development means acknowledge the claims made by China. And we said no, because those that what China mentioned, the successful cooperations in Vietnam and Thailand, mm-hmm. was outside the EAZ. And he said, we are open, after the 200 nautical miles, we'll be most willing to work with you. But in no way do we agree to joint development. And of course, as I said, ASEAN member states, we do not recognize the 9-dash line, or 10-dash line. And the arbitrations the Philippines submitted was very clearly stated, and they do not recognize the 9-dash line. So again, it is ongoing discussion, the DOC, Declaration of Conduct of Parties. And of course, US is not part of UNCLOS, United Nations Convention Laws of the Sea, and China is. But again, when I'm saying they're not a member of the UNCLOS, of course they have reason for that. But we don't want to be seen that managing Southeast Asia is just with China and not with the US. So I don't want to comment on what the Prime Minister of Malaysia have said. But that's how our position then, when I was a foreign minister. Thank you.
Now, we've come to the end of the session, but I'm willing to take one more question, short question, and I think we'll try a short answer too. Is there any other question here? Yes, there's one on the side of the room. Short question, please.
I'll keep it short. My name is Daniel Shariat, PhD student at UC Berkeley. It was wonderful to hear you talk on Syria. I just wanted to ask, because if I'm interpret your stance on how you feel ASEAN should proceed, it seems that you're advocating
we're not hearing you very clearly. Can you, maybe you're too close to the mic.
I'm too close?
I think, yeah, try this, yeah.
Here? Is this
right.
better?
Better.
Okay. Okay, so it sounds like, if I'm interpreting correctly, what you're advocating for is for ASEAN to sort of shift from an internal priority on the member nations to an outward shift using the collective regional power that ASEAN has to be more of a global player. And I was wondering, at least from your understanding of the thing, like how much of a desire is there amongst the other ASEAN nations for that sort of shift, especially when this sort of neutral economy first foreign policy has been quite seemingly effective for quite a while for a lot of the member nations?
The question was, from what you say, you seem to indicate a shift in ASEAN from being interested in internal issues to take a more global and outward role. So I think he would like you to comment on this, and how far are the other members of ASEAN going along with your position?
Well, you asked for a short question, I gave you a short answer. Yeah. Yep. No, because, of course, although the Hamas-Israel conflict is way out there, but it still have impacts on our economies. And then maybe also on security.
Domestic,
yeah. So domestically, as I said, as I was mentioning, the shipping of containers and all that also passing through the Red Sea. And there are already, through my own personal experiences with the state government, there's some cargoes, all legitimate cargoes that can be brought through the Red Sea, and now it's been there for almost 3 weeks, and we have to pay the demurrage charges. So, I mean, in that small way, yes, economically we are affected. So if there's peace in the region, I think that the things will flow smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right. Well, I'm going to call this session to a close. I want to thank Tan Sri Anifah for his very provocative, and interesting discussion this morning. I think many of you would have noticed in previous years our regional forum would have focused much more on this region, on China, on US, South China Sea. This year, I think, as is elsewhere, a new issue has taken over our attention, the Middle East, and our concerns with the Middle East. And I was trying to get you to sort of talk a bit more of how the Middle East impacts on our domestic societies, but we have no time now, but thank you very much, and I think this is one of the changes that really has taken place in the region. So can we please show our appreciation to Tan Sri?
A vote of thank you to the moderator, Excellency Prof. Heng.